Hello everyone, welcome to our topic for today. We will be discussing overexploitation. So we are already done discussing habitat alteration, fragmentation, and habitat loss. So for today, we will be discussing on how do human activities and processes on how to utilize natural resources can cause negative impact to our ecosystem. So these are our learning objectives for today. At the end of the lesson, the students shall be able to first define and determine the causes of overexploitation. Next is to determine the short and long-term impact of overexploitation to the ecosystem, biodiversity, and human environment. Next is to explore measures employed by international as well as national government to protect and save environment from degradation. So by the way, what is overexploitation? Overexploitation, guys, generally is the use or it is the use by humans of natural resource to an extent that is not sustainable anymore. So kumbaga, it's our utilization of natural resources or overutilization of natural resources, making the natural resources not sustainable anymore. So, well, in terms of capturing and harvesting, guys, like for example, hunting, fishing, farming, so the renewable natural resource in a particular area is excessively intense. So the resource itself may become exhausted. For example, we have sardines, herrings, tuna, and many other species of fishes that man captures without leaving enough time for organisms to reproduce. Kumbaga, again, we exploit our fish resources nga mas dako pa ang ato ang ginakuha nga fish than sa rate nga naga-reproduce ang fish. Because what's the main factor? Because of our growing population. Because of the growing population, guys, nagataas po ang need. And nagataas po ang fish nga kailangan para, of course, masuffice ang atong needs. And because of that, we do or we tend to have overexploitation. So overexploitation is recognized as one of the causes of the degradation of depletion of our natural resources. It is a man-made activity that pushes our resources to the limit of its capacity to provide the needs of human population. As what I have told you, or as what I have mentioned, because of the growing population, we also have our needs growing. And in order to suffice that, we get our resources from the environment, and we are testing the environment to its limit and to its carrying capacity up until nga makaya niya kung baga matest na to ang carrying capacity or limit sa environment para i-provide ang atong mga needs. It is also one of the forces and primary drivers that destroy the habitats of majority of living natural resources in biodiversity. Humans often take too many of one species from their natural habitat, and typically this involves a species used as a food source. When a species is harvested or taken at a rate faster than the population can compensate for, the population listed as overexploited or over-harvested. So again, guys, overexploitation is the primary driver nga maka-destroy og habitat because of overexploitation, we tend to let an organism to be extinct because gikonsume na nato. And always remember that every organisms do hold a particular niche or purpose on their habitat. So if ever nga ma-wipe out na to ang isa ka entire species, of course, the maintenance and the development of their habitat will not be the same already. Or kumbaga, basig ka to pa ma-alter because of the loss of that species. And we can say that a natural resource will be overexploited or overharvested basta ang atuang ginakuha nga species, especially for food or bisan unsa pa nga gamitan ana nga mga species, kay more than or faster ang atong pag-harvest than the growth of population to compensate to compensate the population. Kumbaga, ang iyang the multiplication of the species or the reproduction of the species is lesser than the rate of the harvest or of the harvest. Kumbaga, mas paspas ang harvest than sa pag-reproduce sa mga species. And because of that, the population of the species will be over-exploited or over-harvested. Now, so guys, when the population numbers of a species decline to the point where animal or plant could possibly go extinct or cease to exist, the organism is classified as endangered. That's why we have what we call endangered species. Those are the species of animals that is already on the set point kung na siya, kung possibly ma-extinct na siya or dili na siya mag-exist. So again guys, removing a species from their natural habitat can be detrimental. Not only does this threaten the biodiversity or the variation of life within an ecosystem, but it disrupts the balance of the ecosystem itself. Because again, each organisms do hold a vital role to the ecosystem. They hold a particular niche in their habitat, and because of the um, extinction of the species, dili na ingato the same ang ilang habitat. Kumbaga, ma-disrupt na pud ang habitat of the species. And another for that, the predator and prey relationship will also be altered, leading to ecological imbalance. So we have here causes of overexploitation. The main causes of overexploitation are completely human-based. So most of the causes, guys, nga nung ma-exploit na to ang organisms are human-based. Humans use resources at will without thinking about the impact that it may have on the planet in the near or far future, only thinking of what they want and what they need. Human population growth, increased consumption, and reduction of resource efficiency are the major factors that influence the escalation of overexploitation. Again, guys, as the tragedy of the common tells us that if an area is a common area, then it will be overexploited. Because people would think selfishly. Kung the more nga unsa iya makuha sa environment, the more niya kuhaon without thinking the impact that it has on our ecosystem. Because again, in the tragedy of the common, unsa ganito siya, tungod kay there's no one owns the ecosystem. It's actually a common property of everyone. So what will happen? We will exploit everything na pwede na to makuha sa resources as long as maka-benefit ta. Kaya naman, ato bitaw ni tanan. Bisa kinsa bitaw makakuha diri, go lang bitaw. Wala bitaw tag-iya ani. As long as makuha na to ni then go and go and go. Without thinking the impacts that it does in our ecosystem. So because of human population growth, guys, so the increase of consumption also rapidly multiply. And because of that, it escalates over exploitation. So we have here different sources or different influencers of the overexploitation. So these are the primary drivers of biodiversity loss. So of course, we have habitat loss, invasive species, overexploitation, pollution, climate change associated with global warming, and that could lead to loss of biodiversity. So habitat loss, guys, how? By thinning and fragmenting habitats or outright destruction of an ecosystem's plant, soil, hydrologic, and nutrient resources. So what are their influencers? It's either human population growth, increasing consumption, and reduce resource efficiency. Because of that, we have habitat loss. Now, we also have invasive species. It's any non-native species that significantly modifies or disrupts the ecosystems it colonizes. For example, kana mga janitor fish, golden kuhol. So unsa man ang hitabuan na, unsa man sila nga mga species guys, kumbaga unsa na ilang ginahimo sa mga invasive species. So those species that are not living on the native area, kumbaga nag-migrate lang sila, kaya gidala sila by human activity. So for example, ako nagdala kog janitor fish diri sa amoang lugar. And then gibuyan na mo sa moang sapa. So what will happen? The janitor fish will multiply and it would eat all of the um, kanang mga fishes nga naa po dira sa may kanal or sa pond. So for example, naatoy tilapia dito or naatoy mga lahi nga isda ang pond because gibutangan nimo og janitor fish kauno niya tong mga gagmay nga isda nga naa nga naga-exist sa imuhang pond. So that's invasive species. Kumbaga, these are species that are not living naturally on the area, but then it multiplied and it caused negative effect because too much na ang iyahang pagkaon sa mga predators or mga animals nga nag-live dira sa area. And sadly, most of the invasive species kay wala sila mga predators. That's why daghan sila magpahamak. Muna nga dako sila og pinsala. So muna na siya guys. Next, we have overexploitation. Of course, we have process of harvesting too many aquatic or terrestrial animals, which depletes the stocks of some species while driving others to extinction. Next, we have pollution. It's the any addition of substances or any form of energy to the environment at a rate faster that it can be rendered or harmless. Next, we have climate change associated with global warming. Of course, it's the Earth's modification of its climate associated with the rising levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere over the past 1 to 2 centuries. And these primary drivers, guys, can cause biodiversity loss. It's the reduction in the number of genes, individual organisms, species, and ecosystem in a given area. So, kaning mga primary drivers, guys, are being influenced by human population growth, increasing consumption, and reduced resource efficiency. And mura na siya pendulum ba nga naga continue na siya nagasunod-sunod. So after you because after these influencers, kanina dayon ang iyang product. And because of this, 5 we have habitat loss, invasive species, overexploitation, pollution, climate change associated with global warming. These 5 will now result to biodiversity loss. It's the reduction in the number of genes, individual organisms, species, and ecosystems in a given area. Okay. Okay, guys, so let's talk about the different impacts of overexploitation. So let's deal first with the short-term impacts. So for the natural environment, guys, we have endangerment leading to extinction of species possibly endemic to the area due to the overfishing or other reasons. So when you say endemic, guys, those are the animals that only present in a particular area. For example, we have tertiary. So asa man na siya makita, it's only from Bohol, right? So that's what we call endemic species. So because of overexploitation, it could have a risk of extinction because again, the only area kung asa na sila makita kidra lang and then ma-overexploit pa gyud sila. So that can cause extinction. And again, let's go back and remind ourselves nga if ever nga naimawala nga isa ka organism or isa ka species, mawala ang ihapong function sa environment or ihang niche, and of course mawala pod ang or magka-ecological imbalance pod because of maapektuhan man tong mga species nga related ana or related sa nawala nga species because wala na tong wala na makaon ilang predator or di ba kung mga nga mga unsa ba or unsa pa man nga mga benefits nga makuha nila atong mga species, so maapektuhan sila. So we have for a human environment, we have the lack of natural wonders to visit due to overexploitation. Let's talk about natural environment first. Sorry, guys. So again, mo to siya, endangerment leading to extinction of species possibly endemic to the area are due to overfishing or other reasons. Next is the loss of natural habitat for native species. Yeah, for example, kanang na ay invasive species. And of course, what will happen? Because of the what do you call by that? Because of the invasive species, kumbaga kauno niya itong mga native nga mga species. And then, if ever nga na isa ka species nga mawala, of course, mawala po ang iyang role sa iyang habitat. And because of that, ma-change na ang factor ng habitat. And it could entirely lose the entire natural habitat for the different species living in that area. So we have deforestation and overfishing. Deforestation, pagkaubos ng gubat. Overfishing, pagkaubos ng isda. Pollution caused by construction. Loss of apex predator, like for example, the shark. In an ecosystem causing the collapse of ecosystem and its biodiversity. Now, predators, guys, like shark, for example, ginakuha ilang mga fins and then gina-exhibit. And because of that, we exploit our sharks. And if ever nga mawala ang mga apex predator, therefore, ang katong mga uban species na ginakaon sa shark, mudaghan to siya nga mudaghan. And tungod kay wala na siya population control, wala na dayoy ecological wala na dayoy siya ecological balance. Next, for the human environment, what are the short-term impacts of overexploitation sa human environment? Of course, it would lack natural wonders to visit due to overexploitation. So if we exploit our natural resources, for example, Banawe rice terraces, nagmina dito i-exploit tanan-tanan dito and because of that, it would disrupt the tourist attraction. And because of the disruption of tourist attraction, it could lead to the loss of income. Because kay makakwarta unta ta sa tourism, pero wala na lang kay naguba man nato ang atuang natural wonder because of overexploitation. So next is not enough fish to be eaten. Kumbaga wala na supply sa fish. And even kay right now, guys, we feel that one because sa una, makakaon po ta dagko kayong mga bangus pero karon kay because of the low supply, mo nagkaon ng tagbangus ng mga gagmay kaayo. Kay mahal naman po ka itong mga dagko. So, yeah, that's one of the reason. Kaya nga naman, wala na may stocks of fish. Muna ang mga gagmay, ginaka-apil og dako. Next, job loss due to the lack of species. So, if ever, na ay mga species na ginagamit, kunya gina-commercialize, and nagatrabaho ka sa commercialization ato, so therefore, mawad-an jud kag trabaho kaya naman wala na may species na kailangan ninyo i-process. Next, countries who rely on tourism to fuel their economy will lose their main source of income due to overexploitation of the tourism that they created. Yeah, especially those countries nga, for example, Philippines, ang ato ang main, it's not really main, pero isa sa mga contributor nato para sa tong income is because of tourism. Now, if we overexploit our environment and mawala ato mga tourist spots, so therefore, makadako po siya impact sa ato ang economy. So yeah, those are the short-term impacts of overexploitation in natural and in human environment. Now, how about the long-term impacts? So let's talk about in natural environment first. So the complete use of fossil fuels, guys, and other non-renewable resources. So if mahurot na nga to ang fossil fuels and non-renewable resources, what will happen? Of course, there would be shortage in stocks. And because of that, mumahal lang atong mga fossil fuels. And aside pa na, it would greatly affect our environment by producing or emitting greenhouse gases, and that would lead to global warming. So next, some cases of overexploitation may contribute to the growing problems of global warming and climate change. The construction of tourist resorts and services to exploit the environment. Yeah, for example, we have na may giliguan before nga dagat guys is actually a very nice nga dagat na apay mga coral reefs, na apay mga ingana. And tungod kay gihimo ang lugar as a tourist spot and nahimo siyang laaganan, what happened? Ang katong mga corals nearby sa shore nga ginaliguan sa tao kay nangamatay because matamak-tamakan, gina-clear, ginaunsa para mahimo siyang area for leisure. Dili man ka ma-enjoy if naay mga corals kay masamad man ka. So makita dyan yung mga buhi pa kayo ang dagat. Napay corals, napay mga slimy kayong mga seagrass, napay mga fishes. Kaso lang, nangamatay sila ang mga corals kadugyan because sa matamak-tamakan sa tao, malabayan ang basura, and that would, of course, break down the habitat of the different species because of personal business. Next, we also have here overexploitation is one of the five main threats to global biodiversity. So therefore, it could lead to loss of biodiversity. Defacement of natural landmarks, for example, mountains, ocean, lakes, and deserts. For example, again, Banawe Rice Terraces, Mount Apo. So those are the landmarks that we have, and it can be deformed due to overexploitation. Next, how about in human environment? What are the long-term impacts of overexploitation in human environment? So the effects of global warming, climate change, and pollution will affect the human lifestyle more severely. So of course, what will happen kung na global warming? Mausab ang mga weather, mausab ang mga magka-typhoon. So of course, ma-change yun ang human lifestyle. Kay if ever mabiktima ka sa bagyo, kay ma-lose man imong everything. Kumbaga nga na, good. And of course, due to climate change, maapektuhan ang atong mga agricultural land and lisod kaayo ang walay water and because of global warming. So, well, because of overexploitation, it could lead to global warming and other pollutions. And because of global warming and pollutions, humans will be affected. So next, we have loss of sources of electricity, like fossil fuels and overexploitation of the coal industry, heightening the prices of electricity, water, and gas, and impacting hugely on the average human lifestyle. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like, for example, mahutdan tag mga non-renewable resources like fossil fuels. So what will happen? Mahal na kaya ang gasolina, or even ang water, guys, mahurot siya or ma-exploit, mahal na pud kaayo ang water. So yeah, for electricity, for water, and that would greatly affect our human lifestyle because we are dependent on those materials, di ba? Kailangan na to maligo, kailangan na to og ka ng mga fossil fuels para sa mga sakyanan and everything. So next, the loss of resources like oil, food, water, trees will eventually cause wars between nations over that source. Because of the necessity of the resources, the wars would be fought on a huge scale, possibly starting another world war. Yeah, because of the scarcity of the resources, what will happen? Mag-migrate ang mga society kung asa dapit na ay taas nga resources. And if wala na joy resources, awayan sa duha ka country ang isa ka luna para sa ilahang resources. So yeah, those are the different impacts of overexploitation in the natural environment and human environment in long-term point of view. Okay, now let's talk about on finding ways to sustainability. So the ad hoc working group, guys, on February 1991, had become known as the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. Its work culminated on 22nd of May 1992 with the Nairobi Conference for the adoption of the agreed text of the Convention on Biological Diversity. The Convention of Biological Diversity was inspired by the word of community's growing commitment to sustainable development. So it represents a dramatic step forward in the conservation of biological diversity, the sustainability or the sustainable use of its components, and the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the use of genetic resources. So based on the convention, they have created 5 strategic goals for biodiversity that is being also anchored with the 20 specific and measurable targets or the IKI targets. So these are the IKI targets. So based on that, they have created these 5 strategic goals for biodiversity. So first, we have here the indirect causes of biodiversity loss. So it's really important to check the indirect causes of biodiversity loss in order, of course, to protect biodiversity. So we need to check what are the factors indirectly affecting biodiversity. So if we can see the factors, we can be able to limit those factors, and we can be able to protect biodiversity by not pursuing those factors. So yeah. Next is we have direct purposes on biodiversity. So we all know that our main goal is to promote biodiversity, and it's a holistic process. Although biodiversity do have a lot of dimensions and perspective, but we need to create programs or whatever programs we need to do, it must be aligned in promoting biodiversity. For example, sa tanan nga mga industries nga atong ginabuhat, we should check if the industries or the action plan that we do for our industry would not um, compensate biodiversity. So kumbaga nga na. So dapat every purposes in different kind of industry, kailangan siya naka-inline po sa purposes of biodiversity or purposes in promoting biodiversity. So next, we have state of biodiversity. So it deals on the status of the biodiversity. Next is the benefits from biodiversity. So it's all about what are the things that we can get by having biodiversity. And because of that, we have formulated maximum capacity on preserving genes and preserving species so that at least we can still manage to promote biodiversity by promoting gene preservation. And next, of course, our responses to biodiversity loss. What are the programs that we can do in order to address the problem? So these are the 5 strategic goals for biodiversity. And it is anchored here in the 20 IKI targets. So these are the IKI targets. So yun guys. And here in the Philippines, we are actually very abundant in terms of biodiversity, because Philippines is one of 18 mega biodiverse countries of the world, containing 2/3 of the Earth's biodiversity and between 70 and 80% of the world's plant and animal species. Diba? Imagine 70 and 80% of the world's plant and animal species. And the Philippines as well ranks 5th in the number of plant species and maintains 5% of the world's flora. So species endemism is very high. So we have a lot of species that are only or that can be only found here in the Philippines. So it covers at least 25 genera of plants and 49% of terrestrial wildlife. O, diba? Imagine, though we have 25 genera of plants and 49% of terrestrial wildlife, that is or that can only be found here on the Philippines. So while the country ranks 4th in the bird endemism and considered to host the most number of marine species in the world. So, di ba? Philippines is considered as the most or as the host of the most number of marine species in the world. And we also rank number 4 in the bird endemism, or the birds that can only be found here in the Philippines as well. So the Philippines is also one of the world's biodiversity hotspots with at least 700 threatened species, thus making it one of the top global conservation areas. So the Coastal Governance Index ranks the Philippines as 7th out of 20 maritime countries across the globe for its good track and record of well-crafted environmental laws. So while some current proponents of constitutional change include proposed environmental rights in its bill, um, the current Philippine Constitution promotes a right to healthy environment. So yeah, because of the biodiversity that we also rank as 7 out of 20 maritime countries who are very good in tracking records and crafting environmental related laws and propaganda. So next, The 1987 Philippine Constitution provides that the state shall protect the nation's marine wealth in its archipelagic waters, territorial sea, and exclusive economic zone, and reserve its use and enjoyment exclusively to Filipino citizens. The same constitution provides that the state shall protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. It also provides for the protection of the preferential rights of subsistence fishers and local communities in the use of inland and offshore fishing resources, and provides for support in the conduct of their livelihoods. So land ecosystems suffer equally according to Dr. Mandita Lim. So what are the problems that marine life do encounter that also is a problem in land ecosystem? So the former director of Philippine Biodiversity Management Bureau and exclusive executive director of ASEAN Center for Biodiversity laments. So that's Dr. Mandita Lim. So according to Dr. Mandita, in the Philippines, we have lost almost 93% of our original forest cover since 1900s. In 2008, 58 out of 206 then known mammal species native to the Philippines were included in the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN. Red that or it is being included in the red data list of threatened species. So kumbaga um kumbaga a lot of mammal species that is native or that are native in the Philippines are being included on the threatened species, kumbaga endangered species na, threatened na para ma-extinct. This is a number that is significantly large, considering that more than half of our native mammalian species are found only in the country and nowhere else in the world, because those mammal species are endemic. So we also have, guys, what we call the Earth Law or Earth Jurisprudence, including the Rights of Nature or RON. So these two could help strengthen and evolve the current legal protections of nature in the Philippines. Earth law is an ethical framework that recognizes nature's right to exist, thrive, and evolve, enabling nature to defend these rights in court just like corporations can. Earth law has theoretically origins in 1970s, but since 2006, when the first right of nature legislation was implemented in the US, has been against or has been gaining strength through constitutional provisions or national law in Ecuador and Bolivia, and local ordinances like New Zealand, India, Mexico, and 3 dozens of US cities and municipalities. Why? Why is it important to have this jurisprudence or this law? Because, of course, to protect nature as well from us. Because again, since nature is a common area, it doesn't belong to anybody. The only thing that would protect it from us, or we could be able to protect it from us, is of course to provide law and ordinance limiting our power against nature. So yeah. So since 2003, a series of government laws and policies establishing ICM, or Integrated Coastal Management, as a national strategy to ensure sustainable development of the country's coastal and marine environment and resources, and including guidelines for its implementation. Kumbaga, 2003, that was the issuance of the series of government laws established by ICM, protecting or promoting sustainable development of country's coastal and marine environment. So in 2016, a Senate bill as well to strengthen the adoption of ICM was passed, as a national coastal resource management strategy has been filed or has been passed. So yeah, those are the different laws and propaganda that we have in our country. So yeah, the most important thing here, guys, is that we know the status of biodiversity and its importance. And even without knowing the laws, guys, we already have our own instinct, and we already know. Oh yeah, and we already have the idea on what to do and what are the things that we can do in order to preserve biodiversity. All we need to do is to have self-discipline, look for everyone's interest, and promote healthy environment. So yeah, those are our topics under exploitation. So again, if you have questions on the future, just message me and I will be giving you answers as long as we have time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye for now.